Hey gang, we've had another round of layoffs that hit Bungie to the tune of about 220 employees. This brings the studio size to a bit over 850 developers at the company, and my first thought was that they didn't lay off enough people. So today I'm going to talk about how bad things still are at Bungie, talk a little bit about the CEO, and go over some things that TheActMan said that seem like they make sense from an outside perspective, but they're just flat out wrong. So to start out, I've worked in games for a long time, so I can spot a company if it's become a bit too big to succeed, which is the case for Bungie. So let's take a look at Bungie and get an idea of how expensive things are at Bungie. So Bungie's run out of Bellevue, Washington, really high cost of living area. They do allow some remote positions, which lets them spend a little less on salary and the office space that would be needed to have that many people in Bellevue. So let's put it about $130,000 for each employee for salary, benefits, software, hardware, and the little slice of office space costs. So with that, at about 850 people, that ends up costing them about $110.5 million per year just to keep the doors open with that many people. They would need to sell a little over 3 million units at like $49.99 to just break even for that. And that could be new game sales. It could be a new DLC, like their new Destiny 2 DLC. And even if they did break even, that is not a success, because you need to do more than break even. With the amount of money that these places are putting into these companies, you need to make way more than just your operating costs in a single year. Sales aside, let's talk about team sizes. They're down to 850 people. They're going to be attributed to Destiny 2 and Marathon, and they're going to have like 155 people get brought into Sony itself so that they're not laid off and they get to continue being employed. So we're going to have 700 people at Bungie right now. But for maintaining an old game and building a new one, that is an insane amount of people. Destiny 2 is almost 7 years old. It should have at most 100 people working on it. And Marathon, I'd say max of 300. It's okay, buddy. And I'm sure some people would say, but you need a lot of people to make these games. Like they're so special. And to those people, I would say that that is bullshit. Helldivers 2 was 100 people with Arrowhead. Totally brand new game. Amazing game. Elden Ring and Armored Core 6, 300 people from Software. Those were brand new games. Fantastic games. Baldur's Gate 3 had closer to 450. That's kind of a special case. But again, totally brand new game. Marathon is another FPS game. You're going to tell me that a company that already specializes in FPS games needs more than 300 people to build a game that is their specialty? Okay, this guy was being a bit too noisy, so I've captured him for now. But the amount of bloat that we see in these studios these days is insane. Like, and you know what we get from all this bloat? We get more expensive DLCs. We get more microtransactions. We have more business people that are saying, why don't you add more inconveniences into the game so that we can sell the solution to the consumer? So the bigger these studios get, the worse the value proposition gets for the consumer. So all of this mismanagement is passed on to you as the consumer. And if this studio was not run like shit, they would have been able to put their latest Destiny DLC so that it didn't cost more than a copy of Helldivers 2. It's insane. Now, I hate to see this happen to Bungie. This company is the reason that I bought an Xbox. I wanted to play Halo, and I wanted to play Halo 2. But the only thing that the current day Bungie has in common with the Bungie that got me to buy an Xbox 20 years ago is the name. They overhired, they underdelivered, and this is the result. I hope that places like 343 Industries and similar studios are able to pick up some of the folks that got laid off. But the artists that got let go, this is going to really, really suck for them. I do want to point out a few of the things that TheActMan said in his video on the subject that really bothered me. So first, I want to play a little bit where he talked about severance for the folks at Bungie.
For everyone affected by this job reduction, we will be offering a generous exit package, including severance, bonus, and health coverage. Well, I suppose that's actually good that you did the bare fucking minimum.
I want to make it super clear to anyone that's not in the games industry. This is a very, very generous severance package. This is not the bare minimum. For example, this is Pete Hawley. I worked with Pete Hawley a ways back at a company, and my God, he went to the dark side. So he became the CEO of Telltale Games. And on September 24th of 2018, he called a meeting and he told almost everybody at the company that they were laid off effective immediately and they would receive no severance. They were encouraged to file unemployment as soon as possible, and they had to do that all while having insurance for just another week. And you may be thinking, that's not the bare minimum. They got nothing. They did. They got told that they got let go. That's the bare minimum. Let me tell you another story about the first game company I worked at. All right, my other dog's upset this time, so I got them with me. But Friday hit, paychecks didn't get direct deposited. We were told our bank was having some kind of issue. I had the privilege of working in the 2008 when the financial crisis was unfolding. So I thought, okay, well, other banks are having issues around this time, so I guess we'll just wait like we were told to. So a week later, October 31st, Halloween, we got called into a meeting and were told that the company was completely out of money. We would be receiving no pay for the last 3 weeks of work. Insurance for ourselves would be ending at midnight. And if we wanted to stay and work at the company, they'd be willing to give us stock. The games industry is not a kind place. For all the things to complain about, the severance package is one of the things that stands out as a huge win for the employees that are getting it. Another thing that TheActMan said that stood out to me.
I get that businesses have to make money, but you can also take a hit to keep your employees. Sometimes that is the correct business move.
Let's be real here. Bungie's been taking the hit for a long time. They ran their company so poorly that they needed Sony to come in and bail them out. And with that money, they bloated themselves so much that a greater unclean one would blush. Bungie management is a special kind of awful. They built themselves up in a way where their next game needed to win the lottery for them to stay in business. It was a terrible business strategy. I'm not a fan of Sony at all. But if it weren't for them, Bungie would be no more. They would keep laying off employees in waves, and their senior execs would draw their huge paychecks and keep buying a bunch of fancy shit like cars. And on that note, let's talk about a few things with the Bungie CEO. First off, I saw some people bitching about a story about how he bought a bunch of fancy cars with his own money before people got laid off. And let's be serious, even if the CEO bought 0 cars, everyone would still be losing their jobs. Second, we had some folks pointing out that a few years back, he was talking about how their deal with Sony wasn't going to result in more layoffs, but they sold themselves to Sony. The moment they sold themselves to Sony like that, he didn't have the pure authority to say that. He had to run his business well. And that team didn't. They ran it into the fucking ground. And for all those that are saying that he should resign, nobody does that. He's making bank, Bungie. And if he gets kicked out by Sony, he's probably going to get even more money. And also because he's the CEO, he probably has stuff written into his contract so he can't just like nope out. Like he would probably need to give them some kind of notice, and it's just not in his best interest. He's not going to do that. This guy, it looks like he checked out of being a CEO a long, long time ago. I'm not sure why he's still there other than to just draw a paycheck. I did read that a lot of senior leadership got let go, and the new job for their replacements is probably going to be to identify people that need to be laid off in the next round. Because again, 700 people is way too many to have working on a 7-year-old game and a new title. I get that games like Diablo 4 had like 3,000 people working on them, but they were making good money off of WoW and Overwatch to subsidize that absolute shit show of a company. And in case you hadn't heard me say it before, I do not recommend that people go to work in the games industry. It's an extremely volatile place to work in. Starting pay isn't great. And even if your team does a good job, poor business decisions can close that team down in a heartbeat. A lot of good people lost their jobs to these poor business decisions. And I hope they're able to find a job sooner than later. I really hope those with families don't have to uproot their kids to move somewhere else for work. I feel sympathy for the folks that get laid off, but my heart really goes out to the families, especially the kids, in case they have to leave school in the middle of a school year, and leave all their friends behind. It's fucking awful. And while that's a depressing note to end on, that's all I got to talk about today. Feel free to subscribe for other games related content. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again in a future video. Farewell.